Hi everyone, and welcome to session 2 of the PlayBoard training. This session focuses on participation and the toolkit. So the session 2 aims are to consider participation through the lens of play for 4 to 8-year-olds in your settings, to understand how we can embed participation for children and young people, and to explore participation frameworks and models. We'll start off with this diagram that we follow on PlayBoard for participation. We believe there are 3 layers. Firstly, there is joining in. So simply joining in because you're there or because it is routine. Then we have joining in a meaningful way. And they could be joining in because their friends are joining in, or they actually do like the game. And lastly, joining in because they're sharing in the decision making, the most important option here. So they're joining in because they're able to take ownership, they feel valued, they feel accepted, and their views are acted upon, and it ultimately improves participation. So that's something to think about within your setting. Do children and young people have a say in the decision making? So on to participation, which is a children's right, as stated in Article 12 in the United Nations Children's Rights Convention. So this applies to all children up to the age of 18 without any discrimination. It can be individual or as a group. It's inclusive to all children and young people's lives, regardless of backgrounds. It should be inclusive. It requires different methods for different contexts and environments, and can take place directly or indirectly. Ultimately, we aim, or this aims to empower children and young people, giving them a sense of pride and allowing them to feel listened to and respected. So let's make children's ideas a reality. Participation is more than just asking children for their ideas and views. It's an ongoing process of listening to them and turning their ideas and opinions into reality. Something they do appreciate in their settings, even in an educational setting. So children and young people communicate in many different ways, which is why we need different methods of communication to encourage participation. Ages and levels of needs and support can affect their participation. We, however, are focusing on the age group of 48-year-olds. So we as adults first have to get into the mindset of this age group. Some of us may be used to working with this age group, but some may not have this age group in their setting, or they've never actually worked with them. So us as adults do need to try and adapt a little bit to work with them. So how do we do this? Something to think about. If we think about the session 1, which was about play and play-based approaches, they covered the importance of following a child-led mindset. So now we now understand that we are able to adapt to this mindset to allow us to access children's realities, allow them to find their voice, and most importantly, not to influence their voice, to listen and let them tell us what they like and what they need. So as children are spending so much time in your settings during the week, especially at a young age, they can be influenced very easily. So it's important to involve children in decision making around things that are going to affect them, rather than telling them what things are going to look like. So you can have a think in your own time how you would do this in your setting, how you would involve children into the decision-making process. An example, as you can see on the screen, a wee anonymous suggestion box. It could be something to start with. So how can we encourage, we can encourage participation by the following: providing fun, child-led activities, asking open-ended questions, giving children time, space and permission to talk and to be heard, ensure they feel safe and respected, and finally, allow them time, space to play and to have fun when they're in your youth setting. So on to the priorities for youth, relevant to your youth settings, with, as we mentioned earlier, Article 12 of the UNCRC. Here we are talking about the means, the space, opportunities to participate. So the model of effective practice has strengthened the participation of young people at the centre of youth work, and the extent and success of their participation is a major emphasis on any educational, non-educational activity. So the youth service is able to provide young people with the means, the space, and the opportunities to participate at a local, sub-regional and regional level, which underpins the values within the priorities for youth. Also, to contribute to raising standards for all and closing the performance gap between the highest and lowest achieving young people. This is done through providing enjoyable, non-formal learning opportunities which can help enhance their social and cognitive skills. Also ensuring their voice is heard. So to continue to improve the non-formal learning environment, participative settings in which the voice and influence of young people are championed, supported and evidenced will ensure their voice is heard and give them that backing up that they need and that they value. And lastly, to foster and support active participation. So participation in the youth service is voluntary and should enable young people to develop the necessary knowledge, skills and ability to tackle the issues that are important to them. And the active participation of young people should be fostered, supported and evident. So what does the UNCRC say? What's it telling us? Transparent and informative. Children and young people must be provided with the full, accessible, diversity-sensitive and age-appropriate information about their participation. They should understand that it is voluntary and that they can stop at any stage and should never be coerced into expressing views against their wishes. It's completely voluntary. Children and young people must be listened to and taken seriously and their views treated with respect. Opportunities must be available for children and young people to express their views that are relevant to them. So child-friendly environments and working methods. Approaches to children and young people participation should be adapted to their capacities, to whatever suits their individual needs and their level of support. Inclusivity. So participation must be inclusive and to avoid existing patterns of discrimination, making sure that we encourage opportunities for all to be involved. So supported by training, the adults in the workplace need preparation, skills and support to facilitate children and young people's participation. So we're on to the last two. So safe and sensitive to risk. Adults have a responsibility towards their children and young people with whom they work with. So staff need to recognise their legal and their ethical obligations and responsibilities, such as sensitive or safeguarding issues. And lastly, accountable. So following up and acting on any proposals by children and young people is key. They are entitled to be provided with clear feedback on how their participation has influenced any outcomes. And then monitoring and evaluating of participation needs to be undertaken with children and young people where possible. I hope that makes sense. Okay, on to the Lundy model. The Lundy model was designed in 2007 by a professor of social sciences, Laura Lundy. This is her model of participation, and it is around 4 elements. So we've got space, voice, audience, and influence. These dimensions offer a comprehensive approach to participation, and the model will enable the understanding of the process of participation through a playful lens, which is our aim for this training. It will provide a basic introduction on the playful participatory methods in your setting for 4 to 8-year-olds. We'll go into the Lundy model in a little more detail. First, we have space. So children need to feel safe. They need a safe space to be able to feel comfortable and enough to voice their opinions and ideas in your setting. And the space must be inclusive to all. And we have voice, so it's important to give children the opportunity to speak and to use their voice, allowing them to express their views within a safe space, either verbal or non-verbal. They could write it down, and they could draw a picture, could be through drama or singing. We will discuss the child-centered methods of how we can give children these opportunities in the 3rd session. But important to remember that as adults, these times we are here to listen in our settings, be creative and fun, and keep it child-led. Third, we have audience. So an audience is something children always desire. Showing an interest in children and praising them is so important. Being supportive audience for children and encouraging them to express their views and opinions is vital. We should make sure the audience is someone who can make their ideas and opinions a reality. So be encouraging and respectful and promote themselves. To ensure that we are able to put their ideas and opinions in motion, and if they are unrealistic expectations, the adults can express this. But it's good to be the audience for you, to so that children and young people can go to you. And lastly, we have influence. So ensure the views of children and young people are listened to, and make sure children feel like their voices are being heard. So just a short checklist on what to remember from the Lundy model. For space, have you allowed enough time to listen to and to hear their views? How do you make sure that all children and young people are heard? How will you ensure children and young people feel safe to express their views? Voice, how are children and young people provided with the support they need to give their views and to be heard? How can they raise the things that matter to them? And how are they offered different ways of giving their views? Audience, how do you show that you are ready and willing to listen to children and young people's views? How do you make sure they understand what you can do with their views? and influence? How will children and young people know how much influence they can have on decisions? How will you give them feedback? How will you share with them the impact of their views on decisions? And how will you explain the reasons for the decisions taken? Okay, so one of the benefits of children's participation, something to think about next time you're observing some play or you're providing the resources. Think about the benefits and what they're actually getting out of it. So a sense of responsibility, talking about the feelings to one another, healthy coping mechanisms that they'll develop that through play, through having fun. They should feel safe. They should be having fun. They're building on their confidence. Inclusion, feeling of belonging, agency and ownership, and increase their confidence again. You can never have too much confidence. Okay, so approaches to participation in the youth setting. We broke this down to a few levels. So at a club and project level, these are the day-to-day decision-making within youth settings. Children and young people are involved in the day-to-day activities and methods of engagement in the club or project. Next, we have the youth setting. So these are the organizational projects. Children and young people participate in the decision-making in organizational programs, plans, policies, and events, as well as in the governance of the organization. And lastly, the external consultation. So these are often one-time participation efforts in which the governing department, civil society, and organizations ask children and young people in youth settings for their views and experiences, which will help them inform specific policies and research and future legislations within the settings. So barriers to participation, this is also something that you may not think about. Barriers, why might children, young people not participate in your settings? Could be for a number of reasons. A few could be the environment that they're in. It could be their personality. Are they quite shy, reserved? Their needs, support needs. Maybe they need new games, new activities, new resources, something new to keep them entertained. There could be something wrong as well. So it's good to make a note of the possible barriers in your settings, and that may help you build and encourage participation. Okay. Now we're on to the engagement framework within EA. We're looking at the categories of engagement and the indicators of engagement. And this is broken down into contact, engagement, active participation, and maximizing potential. Also the intensity and commitment of engagement, distance traveled for children and young people, and children and young people's influence on decision making. So if we look at the children, young people's influence on decision making, the first one here, we have makes personal decisions on participation in activities designed by others. So it sounds like it's their choice. Contributes to decision making with others relating to a specific program or activity. Below that, we have actively involved in assessing needs, decision-making, planning, problem-solving, either around a single activity or within the club. And lastly, positively influences others, advocates on behalf of others, takes on a representative role within and or beyond your club unit project. All really good and encouraging participation in some form or level. Something to think about as well, and could benefit you in your club on how to encourage engagement and the indicators of engagement. So planning for participation. How do we plan? How do you plan participation? Ensure there is a safe, effective, and meaningful practice. It does require careful planning and preparation. So you could do this in your regular staff meetings. Ensure that children and young people involvement leads to positive outcomes for change. So it's all good having, asking children and young people for their views and opinions. However, if it's not acted upon, it's not noted, it's not reflected, nothing's changed, they may not feel valued, and this could be something that affects how they are within your setting. So just ensure that they know it's being acted upon and listened to. Keep children and young people's best interests at the forefront at all times. So something else to refer to when you're planning for participation. Involving children and young people in the decision making. This document looks at the level, which we mentioned a couple of slides ago. So we've got the club and project level, the youth setting organizational level, and the external consultations. Within that, we have child-led, collaborative, and consultation, which are the 3 C's. And on the right-hand side, the participation approaches. Participation activity is initiated and led by children and young people, completely child-led. Participation activity is initiated by children and young people, but they share decision-making with adults. So they're able to share the decision-making. They're not being told, do this, do that. They do still have a say. However, as you can see, there is an arrow from child-led and collaborative into that one. So it is collaborative. And also in the collaborative is the participation activity is initiated by the adult, but shared decision-making with children and young people. Down below, in the consultation, adults inform and consult are informed and consult the children and young people, and adults provide all the information necessary for children and young people to undertake lead participation activities. So this is a good wee document to look at and reflect over. Think about the methods that you do within your setting, how you do encourage children to speak up, how you do listen to their voice. See how much of that is child-led, or is it collaborative, or is it fully consultation? This will help you plan for participation. Okay, so on to the 3 C's, which we just briefly mentioned. Consultation is the approach. This is the approach the adult takes to lead the decision making by 1, deciding how the evidence is being used, and 2, presenting it to the relevant stakeholders. So they write a report on the views and experiences shared by children and young people. They make sure their views are represented truthfully without modifying their meaning. And then the report will be sent to the relevant stakeholder and wait for feedback. Collaborative. In this approach, the adult, children and young people share the decision making on how evidence is being used and how to present it to the relevant stakeholders. The way in which you deal with the evidence emerging from the process. Participation will depend on what you'll be using it for, or what you're using it from, where you got your information from. Key point here is that the decision of how to present the findings and to whom is shared between youth workers and children and young people. And lastly, child-led. So in this approach, children and young people lead the decision-making themselves. 1, how the evidence is being used, and 2, how to present it to the relevant stakeholders. So youth workers in charge of the participation activity can give children and young people some suggestions of activities they can undertake to write the reports and create the posters, or any other means of communication that they may find useful. And as youth workers or anyone that works within these settings, we strive to be child-led at the end of the participation continuum. So play is the most effective way for children to explore their thoughts and feelings about things. And hopefully if you can embed some of this within your own setting, you will be able to see the positive results. So let's think about the values, aims of youth work when thinking about children's participation. They are preparing and encouraging young people for participation, promoting acceptance and understanding for others, and testing values and beliefs. This is from the Curriculum Development Unit 2014. So, what to consider when planning. There are six topics here. This is from the Toolkit. So if you want, you can refer to the Toolkit and read in more detail. We have the topic, ethical matters, information provided, feedback loop, evaluation and reflective practice. So for the topic, we want to make sure there are a list of topics that you want to hear the views on from children and young people, what matters to them. You can then discuss this with them, take part in the participation process, and you could highlight which ones are related topics, which are not more important, but which come to the top first. How will you ensure that the key focus of the process stays on the topics you identified? As you know, you can go off topic very easily. So you can use games to stay on this. Children and young people may have other ideas how they would like to implement it. On to the ethical concerns then. So how will children and young people know that participation is voluntary and that they can withdraw at any time? So when you're planning, just think about that. Let them know that they can. What steps will you be able to take to ensure children and young people understand what entails, what they have to do within this process? So again, just being open and honest and providing all the information that you know to them. And will there be support provided? Another ethical matter. They could be distressed, they could be anxious, uncomfortable, upset. So that's another thing to think about within this process. So information, how will you ensure that children and young people are given age appropriate and accessible information? You'll know by your members what you need, how you need to give them their information, or in what format. And how will children and young people know to whom and how their views will be communicated? Just make sure they know everything they should. And for feedback, how will they be given age appropriate and accessible feedback during and after the participation process? Similar to the information, so just ensure that you're meeting those needs and it's inclusive. For evaluation, how will you ensure that children are given opportunities to evaluate the process throughout? What activities will you set in place to allow for each age group to participate in the process in a meaningful way? And reflective practice, how will you ensure that they are given opportunities to evaluate the process throughout? Evaluation and reflection are important for this, for yourself and for the members, for them to realise, you could do it in such a playful way that they don't know that they're expressing their views or telling you what they want or what they would like to see in the club. So it's good if they can reflect on this. You can say, oh sure, yes, you mentioned that. We're gonna look at that. That was your views, and we appreciate listening to that. So collecting evidence. It's necessary to collect evidence to use in future decision making. This will help you as a setting progress and work on the things that possibly need changed or don't need changed. Many methods of collecting evidence. There are many methods, so it could include drawing, recordings. It could even be, like we seen earlier, an anonymous suggestion box, graffiti wall, posters, pictures, observations. You could be creative in this, in how to collect evidence. Also, you could talk about it with children, young people, and see what they are comfortable with. So taking action, this is the process of influencing change necessary after gathering the evidence of children's participation. Views can then be translated into action. And this is where you look into the 3 C's, and they can be divided into that. So consultation, collaboration, and child-led. For feedback, we've divided Lundy's model into 4 F's of feedback. So full, friendly, fast, and followed up. So Lundy in 2018 recommends a 4 F's feedback for process for consultations or collective decision making with children and young people, which will enable you to give that age appropriate feedback on how their views and experiences are being collected and considered. So providing comprehensive feedback to children and young people, outlining which of the views were accepted and which were not, and the reasons for these decisions. This feedback should also note who is implementing their views and what is happening next. That is full feedback. Friendly consists of a feedback or responses given by decision makers to children and young people. They need to be in a format and language that they understand. They need to be informed about finding a consultation or survey and how their views were given due weight. Fast, children and young people quickly grow up and move on from things they are involved with. So decision makers need to give them feedback and acknowledge that their contribution and outlining initial progress and giving information on the steps, on the next steps, and following on from that. So it applies to all stages of development, and that is the 3rd. That's a fast feedback. And followed up. Decision makers need to provide ongoing feedback and information to children and young people throughout the policy or decision making process. That is an ongoing feedback approach. And that is everything for the second session of Play Your Part. I hope it has covered everything that you need to know about participation. However, if you had any questions, please direct them to olivia.brown@playboard.co.uk. You can also view our website at www.playboard.org. And there's also a telephone number if you would like to call us and talk about anything related to Play Your Part or PlayBoard in general. We would love to hear from you.